Well, hello, I'm Craig Smith from Family Integrity. Family Integrity is a volunteer, not-for-profit organization which has been formed and based in Palmerston North to pull together those families who are really sick and tired of excessive and unjustifiable government interference into the private operatings and the private functionings of families. In other words, government interference destroys the family's integrity. And this is what we're hoping to preserve and defend and protect. Our home is indeed our castle. What we're talking about specifically is Bradford's bill to repeal Section 59. This bill has been put forward as an anti-violence bill, as if the very existence of this clause, which most people haven't been aware of at all, even up till now, they have said that the very existence of this creates a culture of violence in New Zealand, which gives parents the idea that they have a license to beat their children whenever they want. Well, as we look at Section 59, you'll see that's patently a ridiculous idea, sadly being put forward more than once by people like Sue Bradford, a member of Parliament, and Dr. Cindy Kiro, the Commissioner for Children. This is not, in fact, a bill that's anti-violence. This bill is anti-parental authority. It will most definitely repeal a parent's authority to deal with their own children in the areas of correction, training, and discipline. It will take that completely away. So let's look at Section 59. What on earth does this say anyway? Okay, it's very simple. Every parent of a child is justified in using force by way of correction toward the child if the force used is reasonable in the circumstances. I'll repeat that because the wording is very significant. Every parent of a child is justified in using force by way of correction toward the child if the force used is reasonable in the circumstances. So the idea here is that this section of law, it's its own little title that says domestic discipline. It legally acknowledges and recognizes domestic discipline, that parents have a duty to correct their children, and that this duty is authorized by law to use force when necessary. But the force is surrounded by two limiting factors. The first is that the force must be used by way of correction. That means if it's to vent anger on the child because of frustration, to get your own back, that is not justified in this act. It says by way of correction. So there's the jury, or should this kind of a case ever come before a jury or a judge, they can look at and interrogate the parents, the caregiver, what was the motivation for the force used. And if it was not for corrective purposes, which is similar to correcting or training or discipline, then the parent is in trouble. But the second limiting factor here is that the force must be reasonable in the circumstances. And so we have things like a jury looked at a gentleman who smacked with his bare hand the bare bottom of a 2-year-old child. This was in Taranaki last year. Smacked the bare bottom with his bare hand, 2-year-old child who pooed his nappies. And so what was the motivation? Was it corrective? Well, obviously no. How do you correct a child who's wearing nappies for pooing their nappies? That's what 2-year-old babies do. And so the motivation was incorrect. And apparently the force used was unreasonable in the circumstances because it left big bruise marks on the child. We have another case just recently down Timaru where a mom used an 18-inch piece of bamboo, a garden stake, to whack her child's big, chunky 12-year-old boy, clothed backside. The child submitted to the discipline before it was administered because he had smashed the door over at the schoolyard. It created damage. And so she gave him some smacks with this bamboo rod, and the mother was found to be justified in using corrective force, and that the force was reasonable in the circumstances. Now, you see, the critics of Section 59 have said, oh, look, Section 59 has been applied inconsistently. And that's one of the issues they cite is these two cases, where one time an open hand on a bare bottom is found to be unjustified, whereas an implement, a bamboo stake, on a clothed bottom is found to be justified. Well, the circumstances are entirely different. The motivation was entirely different. The force used in comparison to the size of the child, the size of the parent. When the jury looked at the entire circumstances, they found reasonable in one case, unreasonable in another case. And so this piece of law is actually brilliant. It is worded brilliantly because it allows parents to go about their parenting duties without fear of being always possibly charged with criminal assault. But it also allows cases of abuse, when they come before the courts, to be nailed for abuse. This Section 59, they say it allows true abuse to get off the hook. Well, it's just not a true critique. It's rarely used for a start. The only person I know of who has actually done research on this is a lawyer, John Hancock, who works for the pro-repeal lobby. He was trying to get rid of this. And he searched an 13-year period up until 2002, 13-year period. And during that 13 years, he could only find 18 instances where Section 59 was even raised as a defense in a court. In fact, they weren't all criminal cases. Some of these were family court cases. So it's not even raised that much in the criminal courts. Anyway, 18 instances over a 13-year period. That's like 1.4 times a year. And in most of those cases, the parents were found guilty. And so this piece of legislation is doing precisely what it's supposed to be doing. It doesn't let true abuse to get by. It finds them and it nails them. It's rarely used because true abuse is not going to bring up Section 59 as a defense. Again, here's one of the things that the Children's Commissioner, Sue Bradford, and other people bring up all the time. Whenever, in the last couple of years, when you've heard about these terrible deaths that we've seen in New Zealand, Craig Whakaruru beaten to death by the live-in boyfriend, Lily being killed by other family members or extended family members, Coral Burrows, just a drug-crazed guy, just killed the girl. And of course, every time we have these deaths, there's this chorus raised by the pro-repeal lobby, we've got to get rid of Section 59. Section 59 had nothing whatsoever to do with these gross and vile and violent deaths of these little children. And yet these people bring it up to hook them together as if there was some connection, which of course there's none whatsoever.